President Trump speaking moments ago before leaving Washington for the NATO summit. The president responding to a potential violation of the ceasefire he brokered yesterday between Iran and Israel, saying both countries violated it. Israel said it would respond forcefully after Iran launched missiles this morning, just hours after President Trump declared the ceasefire is coming. Iran denying that it carried out any attack, though right before the ceasefire went into effect at midnight, Israel said Iranian rockets killed at least 4 people and destroyed buildings in southern Israel. Joining me now is Texas Congressman August Pfluger, chairman of the Republican Study Committee and a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for being here. You're a former Air Force colonel, a F-22 fighter pilot. I want to get your take on the incredible move over the weekend, certainly, with the U.S. and those fighter pilots destroying the nuclear sites. But first, give us your sense of this ceasefire that President Trump brokered.
Well, thanks for having me on this morning. It's a brilliant move, and the leverage that he created to get to this moment. Obviously, anything you do with Iran is not only trust but verify, but you also have to keep the pressure on. So I think that's something that President Trump is looking for. He means business. He doesn't want to see either side violating this ceasefire. So, let's assess, let's see what happened, and take it from there. But I think when you look at the world stage and you look at the importance of being able to see a denuclearized Iran, if you would have told the American people, in fact, the world, this 6 to 8 months ago, this is what he promised to do. He promised to restore order. He promised to bring strength and peace as a result of that. And this is a great day to wake up in the world and know that we are on the way towards peace. We are on the way towards a denuclearized Iran. And I look forward to talking with you about what those airmen did, because it was true bravery.
So, how are we supposed to trust that the ceasefire is in place when, when we think Iran may have violated it? President Trump is on Truth Social this morning saying, Israel, don't do it. Don't drop any bombs. You're going to be violating the ceasefire. Was this just the fog of war, or, should we just not trust Iran to keep a promise?
Well, no, I don't trust Iran, and we do have to verify for sure. This is why myself and many others in the Republican Study Committee have offered the maximum pressure campaign and legislation, which is to make sure that every aspect, whether it's economic, diplomatic, military, is maximized to keep the pressure on them. But I think, yes, let's take a deep breath and see if it is the fog of war, and we'll know very quickly. And the Israeli approach is to not take things like this lightly. So if they do feel threatened, if the ceasefire was broken, or if Iran strikes back, retaliates, and breaks it in the coming days, we will know very quickly, and that'll put us in a new situation. And I do not think President Trump will take that lightly at all.
So what about those stealth bomber pilots? You have to know what they were feeling as they were in the middle of, partly a decoy. And it was incredible discipline, no leaks whatsoever. The Iranians didn't know what happened until our pilots were on their way back. How would you assess what just took place Saturday night?
It's an incredible moment for air power to have 125 airplanes join up in the sky at precise timing. We're talking within a minute, plus or minus a minute. Very minimal communications to go in and to carry out a very complex mission where they drop these penetrating weapons. My perspective is I know it from the F-22 side, the aircraft that is there to ensure that no enemy fighters can attack the B-2s, that the B-2s and the bombers can make sure that their weapons get onto the target on time. But I have to say, Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, outstanding leadership on the operational security to not have any leaks, to make this the element of surprise truly happen, not just in Iran, but worldwide. That is quite a feat. But President Trump did something just a couple of months ago. He reinitiated the F-47 program, something that President Biden had canceled. How important this is cannot be understated. We have to continue to go as fast as possible. In fact, I am calling in this reconciliation package for a doubling of the Air Force funding to make sure that the F-47 can be purchased, to get the rest of the weaponry and the technology done quickly, because we don't know what's around the corner, but we do know this: air power is a deterrent. Air power can, by itself, like we saw, achieve objectives like it did in Iran, the denuclearization. We have to continue to focus on that. And unfortunately, for the past 4 years, Biden completely ignored it. Thankfully, President Trump has reinitiated this, and it started with the F-47, but we have to go further.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was looking at the history of various presidents, and you had everybody from George Bush to, Bush 41, 43, Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, Bill Clinton. Everybody said something about how Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And then here, President Obama, everybody, all the last several presidents said it. And here you have President Trump coming in and doing something about it. Here's the president on what took place. Watch this.
Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there, absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone.
Incredible. Meanwhile, we all are watching the fallout. And, Congressman, you've got major U.S. cities on high alert after Iran launched missiles at American Air Base in Qatar yesterday. So, they're doing whatever they think they could do. A senior Border Patrol source told Fox that more than 1,500 Iranian nationals were caught at the southern border during the Biden administration. Over 700 of them were released into the interior of America. I'll be speaking with White House border czar Tom Homan coming up in the next hour, so we'll get more clarity on this. Tom Homan, of course, overseeing all of this on immigration policy. But, Mr. Chairman, you introduced a bill to keep foreign adversaries and terrorist sympathizers out of America. How can you do it? How will that be successful?
Well, first off, you have to actually have a secure border, which we do now because we have a president who's willing to enforce the laws. But this is a question I continue to ask Mayorkas and all the cronies that let millions of people into our country illegally, many of whom we have no idea where they are. But the main question was, do you have people inside the United States that match the terror watch list that we don't know where they are? And the answer to that was yes. And that's what we're really worried about here, is not just the people that were released into the country. Yes, they pose a threat as well. And obviously we've seen that has resulted in attacks inside the country. But what about those that we don't know where they are, that slip through the cracks? And that's the danger of not having a secure border. So, yes, I introduced legislation, but the bigger approach here is working with the administration, working with Mr. Homan, Secretary Noem, and others to go find those people and to make sure that they never can harm the United States, because we know that they have the intent. They have demonstrated that time and again.
By the way, Congressman, of course, your district is arguably the best capacity for oil and gas drilling in America. Do you think we will see more of President Trump's agenda as it relates to energy in the second half of the year? I mean, we've been so dominated by geopolitics and the big, beautiful bill. Are you expecting more from the energy part of the agenda to materialize later this year?
Well, I am, and thank you for asking that, Maria. And I think it really depends on passing this one big, beautiful bill. We have to get this done on time. We have to give confidence back to the investment environment there. You and I have talked about it. I mean, 65 to 85 really is the range of pricing for oil that we need in order to continue to produce American oil. We don't want Iranian oil. We don't want Venezuelan oil. But I do think that the energy agenda is going to kick back into high gear, and you're going to see manufacturing come back. You're going to see American jobs come back. I mean, all of these things are really contingent on what we do here. Proud to have passed it in the House. Now it's time to get it through the Senate. We want it to come back looking very similar to what we passed.
Yeah, well, and you think that'll happen by July 4th?
I'm confident. I mean, it's a trust but verify situation, but we certainly are pushing for that.
By the way, Congressman, when oil gets down to levels like they are right now, 66, do the oil companies say, forget it, I'm not going to do any drilling? It's too cheap. I'm not making enough money on it.
Well, it's not that they're not making enough money. It's the fact that it's not economical. We need it to be 65 to 85. That's really the range that the economy needs.
Economical for who?
It's to extract the oil,
companies.
The technology, it takes a certain price.
Yeah. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.